While watching this week's video entry of the age of slavery, I learned that a significant portion of slavery actually had happened later on than what I had initially thought. That there was the Second Middle Passage that caused slavery to become a bigger machine than what it had been after the invention of the cotton gin by Eli Whitney, and that invention kind of changed the fate and the momentum of where things were headed at the time. While all the slave uprising was happening and revolution started, after slavery became more violent, Nat Turner was another figure that I'd heard the name, but I wasn't sure exactly what the story was behind that. But causing the revolution, and the video mentioned that it started like the bloodiest slave revolt in American history. It was underway, and during his revolution, in 2 days, 60 white people were killed, and they were trying to make a statement, trying to show that they didn't want to be stepped on anymore, didn't want to be enslaved, and all the stuff that comes with, such violent and gruesome acts, with them trying to represent themselves and show that they didn't want to be oppressed any longer. Also, I hadn't really thought about what the video had mentioned, is that Frederick Douglass was like the Martin Luther King of the 19th century, and how he really affected all that stuff, how he was able to, even after childhood trauma, kind of rebound from that and escape and not just flee off to, live his life selfishly and just take care of himself, but he went to go speak out and represent for other people and try to bring awareness to the situation, what was happening. There was also mention of the Underground Railroad, and a lot of, I think it was 20,000 slaves that escaped through the Underground Railroad into Canada. And they mentioned Harriet Tubman, which, we learn about a lot in school, but I wasn't sure of, the logistics of, how a lot of that stuff went and how many people had access. So I always wondered how people wouldn't notice, but the video did mention that it was a lot smaller than what people think, and that it wasn't super common for people to have access to the Underground Railroad, which explains why a lot more people didn't try to, use that to escape. I had never heard of Margaret Garner before, and the story that they told was, it was unique, but it was pretty gruesome. I understand where she was coming from, not wanting to go back into, being tortured and raped and not wanting that for her kids. So it's kind of like this strange line of, was it just so horrific that she couldn't watch her children go through that, or did it just, was it too much and she snapped, making her, willing to kill her kids? It's just kind of a crazy thing that, so many people went through, and just a violent act like that was pushed. I guess, media nowadays still does stuff like that, but they take one thing and just kind of run with that, and how a lot of the people who were for slavery kind of used her story as, propaganda to say, anybody black was less evolved, and therefore they needed to have masters and stuff like that. It reminded me a lot of today's media and, a lot of the same stuff that's been going on for hundreds of years, but people think it's new. I just thought it was a little ironic.